Undercover in the Jedi Temple, Dooku carries out Sidious's orders to ensure that the clone army would never be discovered prematurely. The world of Kamino was to be deleted right out of the Jedi Archives themselves. Dooku had done such a neat cover-up job that no one ever knew that Kamino was gone until Obi-Wan rediscovered the planet by following a saber dart shot by Jango Fett. But part of his cover-up was deleting several other worlds besides Kamino. Along with Kamino, Dooku would erase the Sith capital world of Dromund Kaas and 35 other systems. Among them was the swamp world of Dagobah. This is a very curious decision to make for Dooku, considering that Dagobah was a largely uninhabited swamp world in the Outer Rim, a world far beneath the notice of anyone important. And yet, Dooku found it necessary to erase the world from the archives, which inadvertently aided Yoda in remaining hidden when he eventually went into exile. So what was Dooku actually thinking when he decided to go out of his way to delete Dagobah? Well, that's what we will attempt to uncover in today's Holocron. Welcome back to the Archives, Acolytes. Let us begin. Unfortunately, there's never an official explanation given why Dooku deleted the other planets besides Kamino, which has left speculators to develop a few theories. One of the most popular theories is that Dooku did this as a smokescreen. In the event that Jocasta Nu or any of the other archivists discovered the other 36 planets had been wiped from the system, they would not immediately be able to discern the reason why they were deleted, specifically of course Kamino. Dooku could have selected several at random in order to cover his tracks so that Kamino specifically would never be picked up on and investigated. The other popular theory, though, is that Sidious had to delete worlds that were important to the Sith Order. Unfortunately for us currently in the lore, we do not know what the other 35 systems were, which may have given us a clue of whether this theory holds any water or not. The only thing we can go off is that Dromund Kaas was one of the worlds that was also deleted. This world was an important planet to the ancient Sith as it served as the capital for 2 full Sith empires. It remains incredibly strong with the dark side. However, we actually don't think that Darth Sidious wanted Dagobah to be deleted. More than likely, he didn't even know about Dagobah, considering that he never found Yoda during the Empire. This was because the swamp world wasn't exactly important to the Sith, even though it was strong in the dark side. The Cave of Evil, which resided on the planet, carried a potent dark side nexus. This was the entire reason that Yoda decided to stay here for so long. Dagobah fell in the very tiny overlap of a world that was both strong in the dark side, but also beneath the notice of the Sith. And that is all to do with the fact that the Cave of Evil is not Sith in origin. In Star Wars canon, the Force Nexus of the cave is naturally generated like other vergences, but in Legends, the Nexus was created from the release of a dark power in the year 700 BBY. To keep a very long story short, a member of Yoda's species, a Jedi Knight by the name of Minch, followed a Jedi Master from the planet of Bafash. Many members of the Bafashi people became Dark Jedi due to a strange cult that worshipped the dark side on the world, and among them was an extremely powerful master who had managed to construct a red lightsaber. A huge feat for an untrained Dark Jedi. He had no ties to the Sith, however, and was acting completely of his own accord. After taking out the Dark Apprentice, the reckless Jedi Knight Minch pursued the Dark Master to the world of Dagobah. They would then have a final showdown in which the Master used the energies of the planet to create multiple illusions of himself to attack the Jedi, while attempting to lure him to the dark side. The Jedi Knight swung his saber wildly and struck a blow on the Master. Upon the Dark Jedi's death, the Jedi would release a powerful surge of energy which tainted the cave wherein he was defeated, corrupting what would become his final resting place. And from that point forward, the cave continued to grow in power, ultimately becoming a place of darkness and evil. However, it proved to be quite useful for those on personal journeys. The Cave of Evil gave those who entered it frightening visions of the past, present, or future, depending on their fears and their flaws. Ironically though, it was called an evil place. The Cave of Dagobah actually did a lot more to help those that entered it than it did to harm them. This is the reason why Yoda loved and admired the cave so much, because it proved to be a source of wisdom, even though it was dark. It is important to remember that this duel occurred while the Sith were in hiding in the Rule of Two, and we know that contrary to other Dark Jedi, that this group was working on their own, away from the Sith. Therefore, the planet remained beneath the Sith notice, but it was a secret held by the Jedi. Because it is not tied directly to the Sith, it was an untapped well of dark side energy ripe for harvesting. No Sith temples or rituals had created this location. In canon continuity, it is described as a raw hotspot naturally occurring with the dark side. In Legends, it was created upon the death of a foe divorced from the Sith way. It is entirely possible that Yoda had a tie to this place because it was a member of his own species that caused its creation, and in fact, we have a very solid reason to believe that Minch and Yoda are the same person. That was because Yoda was the one that may have killed the Bafashi cultists and watched the cave become tainted in real time. If this is true, then Yoda may very well have told Dooku about this experience during his apprenticeship, but the debate on Minch and Yoda is for a different time. The point today is that Dooku was very well aware of Dagobah's past, whether it was because of his master telling him, or if it was due to his own research. Dooku was always fascinated with the dark side, and the Jedi's interaction with it. The conflict with the Dark Jedi would have been one of the more recent events that occurred, and we believe Dooku would have been interested in this Sith-like being. Dooku may have even visited Dagobah before, feeling the energies of the cave himself, though of course this is just purely speculation. But what this all boils down to that makes it fascinating is that this was a place strong in the dark side that Dooku was aware of, but Sidious was not. There are a few different secrets in the galaxy that Palpatine was not privy to, although they are exceptionally rare. And if you find a location that he doesn't know about, you would better safeguard it, because it just may be the thing that would save you from his grasp. Dooku knew this all too well, which is why our theory rests on Dagobah being Dooku's failsafe against his master. While Dooku trusted that he and Sidious shared a vision of the future, there was always a part of the Count that knew that Palpatine was not to be trusted. He was far too powerful, far too mysterious, and had his hands in too many things. Their partnership was always contingent on Dooku's ability to produce results, and in the event that Sidious decided that he was not doing enough, or perhaps if Dooku somehow incurred the wrath of the Dark Lord, Dooku needed a contingency plan. If the partnership with Sidious were to suddenly go south, Dooku had to hide this planet ripe with the dark side that the Sith knew nothing about. When you think of it in this regard, Dagobah is one of the most important, rare, and valuable worlds in all of the lore, simply because a single man didn't know about it. On Dagobah, Dooku could do two things. He could hide like Yoda, since the cave's energies were certainly able to mask any Force presence from Sidious's long-reaching vision. Or, he could create a temple for himself, harness the power of the cave to create a dark side superweapon, or a cult. Dooku was quite familiar with Sith lore. He went through a period where all he did was study holocrons, to the point of having his own collection away from Sidious, something that is very rare for a Sith apprentice in the Rule of Two. In this collection of holocrons, we know that Dooku studied the likes of King Adus and Darth Ndedu. The Count would attempt to use a superweapon such as the Dark Reaper, a weapon developed by Exar Kun and Naga Sadow. Darth Tyranus was well versed in Sith lore, and it's likely that he had prepared to execute some of these arcane rituals himself if he needed to. He did just want to incur the wrath or suspicion of Sidious, so he pretended to not know as much as he actually did. Many of these rituals require vast amounts of concentration of the dark side and its energy. This is why the ancient Sith built their temples in the first place. The shape, structure, and markings on the old shrines in the temples were meant to channel the dark side energy towards its epicenter. There, the Dark Lord could conduct their rituals or experiments right at the focal point of the concentrated power. This was what created the most potent darkside artifacts and unleashed the most devastating of rituals. If Dagobah had a cave with enough dark energy to mask even the brightest presence of Yoda, then it had more than enough to conduct a terrible ritual. Now, what this ritual may have been is anyone's guess. Again, this is purely our speculation. But Dooku had enough lore from his holocrons to know of rituals that could empower him or unleash a devastating attack to be used against his master. He likely never did any of this because he didn't want to show his hand too early though. Unfortunately for him, the day of his betrayal would come all too sudden though, and Dooku would never be able to use his trap card of Dagobah to use against his master. As we know in the Clone Wars, Yoda would eventually find Dagobah after following Qui-Gon Jinn's voice in the Force itself. There, we know that he saw many visions of terror within the cave itself. Having experienced the power firsthand and observing that no Sith structures were present, Yoda would determine that this place was safe to hide from Sidious. And so, in an ironic turn of events, Dooku would delete this world from the Jedi Archives in a sneaky plan against his master, and unbeknownst to him, he had just secured the survival of Yoda, his previous Jedi Master. So in a roundabout way, his actions of keeping Dagobah hidden did in fact prove to be successful, and a great contingency for Darth Sidious. The cave on Dagobah was unlike any other darkside nexus in the galaxy. It had not been twisted by rituals or corrupted through war or bloodshed. It was a pure, raw darkness, untouched by ideology or ambition. Yoda saw this not as a threat, but as a lesson. The Sith, who bent the dark side to their will, staining the Force with hatred and desire. The cave represented the dark side as it existed in nature, chaotic, unshaped, but essential. It was a reminder that darkness was not inherently evil, it simply was. To Yoda, this became a crucial insight into the nature of balance, that the Force wasn't meant to be dominated by light or dark alone, but understood in its entirety. The cave taught him humility, and the importance of respecting the dark side in a natural form, free of control, free of corruption, and perhaps closer to the true will of the Force than either the Jedi or the Sith had ever realized. And so, my friends, what do you think? Do you think that Dooku could have been preparing for a deadly backup plan against Palpatine, with Dagobah as its centerpiece? Or do you think that it was more of a smokescreen to cover his real intentions on Kamino? These kinds of speculations are one of our favorites to undertake, and if you have any theories of your own, make sure to comment them down below. Getting different perspectives always helps our own gears when turning on theories pertaining to lesser known lore topics. So until next time, my friends, thank you so much for joining us in the archives today, and may the Force be with you.